Hi, I'm Vernon L. Bowling, and welcome to another edition of Focus. As I hope you know, Focus has been on the air for over 40 years. We've been continuing to bring you, the African American community, problems, accomplishments, as well as successes that we've had within the African American community. Don't touch that remote. Matter of fact, you can get your pencils or papers together and write down some information that we're going to give to you that's going to be very important that you probably can use later. We'll be right back with more Focus after these messages.
Hi, I'm Calais Campbell of your Arizona Cardinals, and the season is here, so you better be watching. I'm talking about the water safety season, because a drowning can happen in just a few seconds, and we can't afford to lose this game.
That's right, Calais. I'm Phoenix Fire Chief Bob Kahn. The Arizona Cardinals and the Phoenix Fire Department have teamed up to remind you to always watch your kids around water and never swim alone.
Water safety season never ends. Please watch your kids around water.
Hi, I'm Fatimah, and I know you have a lot of questions about Islam because it's on everybody's mind, particularly with the presidential campaign happening right now. So we hopefully will answer a few of your questions because with me, I have a very dear friend, Angelica Ali, who is a Muslim. And Angelica, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we're going to get right into this because I've known you for quite some time, and you defy all the stereotypes that people may have about Islam.
I try.
And about particularly women in Islam. But let's go to the beginning because you were born and raised a Christian. So how did that transition happen?
I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, which is the home of the Nation of Islam. But I was never a member of the Nation of Islam. We're also adjacent to Dearborn, Michigan, which has the largest population of Arabs outside of the Middle East. So I always grew up sort of between two worlds, going to church every Wednesday night for Bible study, Friday night for family night, Sunday for Sunday school and regular worship service. But I would see, men in bow ties. I'd see women in long black chadors walking around. So there was always this curiosity that I had about Islam. Around maybe age 19, there was a scandal at our church, and it led me to start investigating a little bit more about how this could arise within a faith community. And through my research, this scandal itself, because it had a lot to do with morals and values and things like that. So I started to do a lot of investigation. I was a sophomore at University of Michigan, and I took a world religions class. And in my class, there was a black girl. She looked like she could be my cousin, but she was covered in black, her head from head to toe in black. And I had never known that black people could be that kind of Muslim. I always knew about the Nation of Islam, and I appreciated it as a socio-political organization, but I never considered Islam as a religion because I thought black people are Christian, period. So that led me to a lot of research about Islam as a religion. And I was really resistant at first because I was a very staunch, devout Christian. And then I met a woman who became my best friend, and she was a Muslim. And
now, was she Nation of Islam Muslim or Orthodox Muslim?
She was what you would consider an Orthodox Muslim.
Because there's a big difference.
Yeah,
I don't think that a lot of people understand that.
They don't.
Yeah. So, and perhaps I will bring someone on from the nation so we can talk more about the Nation of Islam.
And and we have I have a strong affinity for the Nation of Islam. Because I think it's very important to black people. And it did at least open the possibility that black people could be Muslim, but I didn't know you could be Muslim like that. And so I met Asia, and over the course of 4 years, she just gave me information here and there. She never tried to beat me over the head with it. And finally, when I was 23, I said, you know what? I think I want to do this. I can see myself living as a Muslim, and then that's when I took my Shahada.
So how long has that been?
That's been 19 years now.
19 years. So, because some people would think that you became a Muslim when you met your husband.
Yes.
But you were a Muslim before you, which probably is what attracted him to you and you to him.
Exactly.
But we'll go into that perhaps a little later. Now, you have studied and practiced Christianity, and you are currently practicing Islam. what do you see is the difference between the two religions?
I think the biggest difference between Islam and Christianity, the biggest theological difference between Islam and Christianity, I just have to put that out there first, is that Muslims, we believe in Jesus. We believe that Jesus was one of the greatest prophets to have ever lived, but we do not believe in God the Father. You know, we don't believe in Jesus as the Son of God in how we refer to people being our sons and daughters. We believe that God doesn't have any progeny, that he didn't beget a son, but that God sent various prophets throughout time to deliver a divine message. So
And Jesus was one of the prophets.
And Jesus was one of them. And Jesus, actually, a lot of people don't know that Jesus is known as Isa in Arabic. So if you open an Arabic Bible, it'll say Isa. But Jesus is mentioned in the Quran more times than the Prophet Muhammad. So a lot of people don't know that. That's one of the biggest differences. And I think another big difference is that now we see a lot of progressive movements within churches. And I think a difference is that Islam has tried as much as possible to maintain its traditional core. So women covering, you know, male leadership within the clergy, separation of sexes, things that people might think are antiquated. I think that's one of the biggest differences between Islam and Christianity. Because once you get down to the root of it, a lot of it is the same. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Kindness, helping the poor, helping the sick, visiting each other, charity, faith, prayer. A lot of it is very similar.
Now let's go into women, because you mentioned that, of course, being a woman, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on, because you wrote this incredibly beautiful piece about why you wear your hijab. But before we get into that, what you find women who are completely covered, I mean, their whole face, and all you see are the eyes, and then you have women who just their faces is exposed. What is the difference between the two?
Well, it all depends on how you interpret a particular verse in the Quran and a particular sunnah. Sunnah is the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It is in the Quran that women should cover. There's a lot of debate about that. Even within Islam, all Muslim women don't cover. I have to, make sure I say that. But there are some women who take a verse in the Quran to mean that they covered themselves, a hadith, a saying that they covered themselves and it appeared as though they had crows on their heads, which means that they would be covered fully. A lot of it is cultural. I don't take it as being obligatory to cover your face. When you cover the face, it's called niqab, and you usually cover it. You see some women who even their eyes are covered, and that is a way of shielding themselves from anyone who's not permissible seeing them. Then you have other women like myself who just choose to leave our face, our hands exposed. So it's really a matter of personal preference and religious belief, how deep you get.
Now, how internally speaking, amongst Muslim women and Muslim men, or the Muslim community, how does one feel about a woman like yourself whose face is exposed as opposed to the woman whose face is completely covered, or that the one with her face partially covered? Is there any kind of schisms in there, any kind of
yes,
discrimination and stuff
there
happening
are.
internally?
There are. It's interesting. In about 2004, I went to Philly, and when you go to Philly, I would say half, if not the majority of the Muslim women you see, their faces are covered, or you only see their eyes, because they ascribe to a particular, I won't say version of Islam, but a particular belief in Islam that women should cover their faces. So when I'm there, people are sort of looking at me like, well, why do you have your face out like that? When I lived in Saudi Arabia, a lot of the women covered their faces. And then you have people on the opposite side who feel that women who cover their faces are too extreme. So I always say I'm sort of caught in the middle, because I have friends who cover their faces, and when I'm out with them, I'm seen as the loose one. And then when I'm out with my friends and family who are not Muslim, I'm seen as being ultra pious and religious. So it's weird to sort of exist in those two worlds.
Now, there are a lot of people who feel as if the women get the bad, side of the deal here, that they have to cover up where the men don't. And but that's to go back to that incredibly beautiful piece, a post that you did on Facebook about how this is a choice of yours, and how it is your identity, and how you love it because it identifies you as a Muslim woman. Can you speak a little bit more on that?
Well, I think, first of all, when you look at strength, it is very difficult to wear this piece of cloth. It's only 2 yards of fabric. And it doesn't weigh much, but psychologically and spiritually, it's a very heavy piece of cloth to wear. And women, we carry the visual marker of Islam. When we go out in the street and you see me dressed like this, you know I'm Muslim. If you see my husband, you might not know that he's a Muslim. So we carry the visual marker of our faith, and that doesn't mean that we're weak. That actually means that we're strong. And Allah created beauty. You know, our Creator created beauty. He's beautiful. He loves beauty. So the hijab is less about covering beauty, but it's a way of identification. If you see someone out with a fireman's hat on, you know they're a fireman. If you see a doctor with a white coat, you know that they're a part of a medical profession. This hijab shows that I want to be counted as a believer in Islam. I hope that when people see me wearing this, they see someone who they can go to for help. They see someone who's going to be honest with them. They see someone who's trying to live as godly as possible. So it's all about identification for me, and something to be proud of rather than something to shy away from. Even with all of the discrimination that you might get from wearing it, I would rather be identified as a Muslim than to hide that part of my identity.
Now, do you find that you are discriminated against more so than well, here you are black, here you are Muslim, here you are a woman, here you are a beautiful woman. What negative feedback, or feedback, let's just call it feedback, do you get from the world walking in hijab in America?
I always get people who ask me, am I hot? Especially here in Arizona. And I always say, well, if it's 107 degrees, we all hot.
We all hot. Okay. Well, that's not a good one.
Right, like we're all hot.
And who's not hot?
Right,
Okay.
and it's like, of course I'm hot. I mean, if you see me wearing more clothes than you're wearing, of course I'm hot.
Right.
And it's interesting because I get one of two reactions. I either get people who are surprised that I have a voice or have an opinion. Like I might be in community meetings. I might be, you know, in a setting where I'm asked to voice my opinion. And my opinion isn't always what they would expect a Muslim woman to have. So people are always shocked. Either that or people try to act like I'm invisible. And that's the one that gets me every time because I'm almost 6 feet tall. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm black. I'm Muslim. You see me, but I see people intentionally trying to look through me or look past me. And that's the discrimination that always causes a problem for me.
You know, but they do that to, you know, who was it? Ralph Ellison wrote the book Invisible Man.
That's one of my favorite books.
Yeah, we are an invisible people in a lot of settings. So, but I guess you put the double invisibility on when you have the hijab on. Now let's talk about those women who, because you're from America, you're from Philly, and so you have another perspective, I would think, on your carriage and your manifestation of your belief. What about the women who come from Islamic countries, who were born into Islam? Do you think that those women feel as if they have no choice, that they're dressed like this because this is what their mothers and their fathers taught them, and they want to disrobe or put something else on or not wear the garment? Did you, because you lived in a Muslim country for quite some time, and do you see a difference in the women from America who converted to Islam as opposed to those women who were born into Islam?
Yeah, I do. And the interesting observation is that I think that, for one, when people met me when I was in Saudi Arabia, they were surprised that A, I was Muslim, and that B, I chose to wear the scarf. Because if you ever fly to the Middle East, when you're flying into the Middle East, everybody's covered. When you fly out, I went to sleep on the plane, everyone was covered. They had hijabs on, they had niqabs, faces covered. I woke up when we got to New York City and I thought I was on a different plane because everybody had taken their scarves off. For some women, it's cultural. It's definitely cultural. It's a cultural marker, and they feel that when they come to America, they can take it off. And sometimes their husbands encourage them to take it off. During the time that I was there, I only met one sister who was strongly encouraged by her husband to wear the hijab and to cover her face, but she was American. She was not from the Middle East. A lot of people in the Middle East, they choose to wear the hijab because it's a mark of womanhood. You know, if you don't cover, then you're seen as being either a youth or being an unmarried woman. So when you cover, it's a sign of honor. And I don't really see the men there forcing the women to wear it. If anything, I see some women who want to cover more and their husbands discourage them from doing so.
Okay, let's talk about because you were in Saudi Arabia. So now let's talk about Islam and Africa. So that's the Middle East, but let's talk about Islam and Africa because I've traveled extensively throughout Africa, and I see not only Islam but Christianity not necessarily being the best. Not serving the purpose I would hope to see it serving in terms of our people. But that's a conversation we're going to get into after the break. So come back, because I know you want to hear what we're about to say. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Calais Campbell of your Arizona Cardinals, and the season is here, so you better be watching. I'm talking about the water safety season, because a drowning can happen in just a few seconds, and we can't afford to lose this game.
That's right, Calais. I'm Phoenix Fire Chief Bob Kahn. The Arizona Cardinals and the Phoenix Fire Department have teamed up to remind you to always watch your kids around water and never swim alone.
Water safety season never ends. Please watch your kids around water.
Hi, thanks for coming back. My name is Fatimah and we're talking about Islam. We're talking about particularly women in Islam. And with me is our guest, Angelica Ali, who is a converted. She converted into Islam over 19 years ago, and she's lived in Islamic countries. And I wanted to kind of talk about the impact that Islam and Christianity had on, and continue to have, on Africa. What is your perception of Islam and the impact it's had on the continent?
One thing that I think is important for people to realize is that Islam isn't new as a construct. It might be a new name, but the idea of one God, the idea of paying attention to signs in nature for evidence of God, the idea of being charitable and being kind, that's an African tradition. I mean, that's who and what we are. I think that what Islam did was it formalized it for certain peoples in certain areas. But when Islam came to Africa, one of the reasons why it was so easy for a lot of people to adopt Islam as a religion is that it wasn't really new and it wasn't really different. The challenge that I have as a Black person who is very well connected to my African culture and African heritage is I don't like the Arabization of Islam. I don't like the idea that you have to function like an Arab to be a Muslim. I'm Black. I'm African. That's who I am.
And then the Arabs, their involvement in the slave trade as well.
Right, which is a huge problem. I look at Islam, I accepted Islam within a West African community. So people from Senegal, people from Mali, and they taught me about Ousmane Danfodio, they taught me about Nana Asma'u, they taught me about Sheikh Amadou Bamba, Sheikh Umar Tall. They talked about Timbuktu being a center of learning where the Arabs would come and learn about Islam and law and things like that. And if you look at this, if you only focus on the slave trade, then of course, you know, Islam is going to be something that seems antithetical to African culture and African peoples. But if you look at the African people within Islamic history, Bilal, the first caller to Islam, if you look at the contributions that we've made to Islam, it's just as much our right as it is anyone else's.
So then let's go back to the garb. The garb is more Arab than African. Am I correct?
It depends on how you wear it. If you go to Africa, you'll see women who have on a turban and then they'll have a scarf draped around like mine. In the interest of full disclosure, I wear my scarf like this because it's easy. You know, if you see some of the sisters who come out of Nigeria, Ghana, Mali, Senegal, I mean, they are just like dressed to the nines and they're fully covered. Islam doesn't dictate how you should cover. It's just that you should cover. And I was for little babies. I just don't have time to really do it up.
You look very beautiful. You always do. Now let's take the look. Let's do the makeup thing. Because see now, you over here, you ain't got no makeup on, Angelica. Now I didn't see
I got some lipstick on.
Okay, you got some lipstick, but I have seen you in full beat face, baby. So does that matter? in Islam? Does a woman have to wear no makeup, or is that preferred? Or
It is preferred. I will just say that it is preferred.
but there's no compulsion.
But there's no compulsion. But here's the thing. There's a concept in Islam called urf, which, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But it's the concept that you do not have to negate a part of your culture in order to be a Muslim. And as a black woman, I do have lipstick and mascara on. Like, that's the minimum that we're going to leave the house with. And I had a conversation with my husband about it. And he said, no, it's okay for you to wear makeup because this is a part of your culture. If you didn't wear makeup, people might ask you, are you sick? Are you okay? You know, is something going on? So for some people, they do choose to go barefaced. But for me, I won't say I can't, but I choose not to.
Okay, let's go to the thing that's on everyone's mind. You know, unfortunately, you have ignorant people in this world, and Muslims in America are viewed as terrorists. I mean, how insanely ignorant is that? But it's a real perception that's happening. So, which is one of the reasons why you probably get a lot of negative feedback, because they call you all kind of names, not realizing, no, I'm from Philly, baby, and I can go there. Don't even think. But the point is that they do think. Have you ever? What are? Because you are, I know you're not a terrorist. Well, how do I really know? But
Right.
but I know that you're not. But there are people who really see Muslims as terrorists. What is your feedback on that?
Well, I think I get some negative feedback because I'm lighter. You know, I'm a lighter complexion. So I've had people say, well, where are you from? I get that question a lot. Well, where are you from? I'm from here. People think that Muslims are terrorists, but the reality is that groups like ISIS and Boko Haram, they be after me for wearing lipstick more than they be after the average American. There are more Muslims who are killed by the terrorists than anyone else. And the discrimination, I think, comes about because there are so many Muslims who live here who cannot be identified. That goes back to wearing the hijab. I want people to know I'm your next door neighbor and I'm a Muslim and I brought you cookies, you know, when you moved into the neighborhood. I think a lot of people don't realize just how many Muslims live in America. So it's easy to ostracize us because we seem like we're foreign, when in reality, you know, we've been here for generations and generations and generations. So I think the ignorance is the part that bothers me, and it terrifies me. Every time I hear about when I was in Saudi Arabia, there'd be mosque bombings, there were car bombings and things like that. And they were targeting other Muslims. So, you know, we're just as afraid, and we want to stop terrorists just like everybody else, if not more than everybody else, because they're giving us a bad name.
Now, let's go into the youth, because you brought that up, and I do want to talk about that, because you have 4 beautiful children, and your oldest girl is 8, 9 years old, and she's never, I mean, she's always in clothing the regular kids wear. You have 2 girls, 2 boys. The little baby is the girl. And are you going to encourage her to fully cover, or are you going to allow her to have her make her own choices as she gets older? And I say that because I'm you know, I've studied Islam. I grew up in the Nation of Islam, and I practiced Orthodox Islam as well. But I used to always see as young teenagers in high school how they would come out the house covered, and by the time they got to the school, they were totally short skirt, makeup on. I mean, they totally disrobed, and then by the time they get back home, they back in covered. What is your stance on young people covering?
At first, I was like, when you turn 9 years old, you're wearing the scarf. I went out and bought her a bunch of scarves. You know, I went through this because I didn't always wear the hijab. So once I started wearing hijab, I'm like, no, my daughters are going to do it. Right, I didn't have it on.
Really?
So it was my husband who said, no, she's not going to. I don't want her to be one of those teenagers who's going out of the house. He said she needs to develop a relationship with the hijab, whether that's through watching you, whether that's through studying. She needs to develop a relationship with it. And she actually asked me over the weekend, Mommy, will I start wearing hijab when I go to 5th grade? And I told her that's a decision that you have to make, based on what you want, based on how you want to represent. And I told her how difficult it is to wear. And so it's something that we want to encourage her. Of course, we want to encourage her to do something that we see as beneficial, but it doesn't help if she's just going to take it off when she gets to school.
Yeah.
You know, we want it to be something that she arrives at on her own. And really, to wear the hijab doesn't mean you're a good Muslim. There's a lot of bad Muslims, bad people
Exactly.
who cover. So we want it to be something that she arrives at on her own.
So what advice would you give someone who is interested in learning more about Islam so that they could dispel whatever stereotypes that they've conjured or that they've been fed? What advice would you give them?
I would say the first thing would be to contact your local mosque, especially here in Arizona. There are a lot of mosques that are doing a lot of community outreach. And if you see somebody that looks like me walking down the street, stop us and ask us a question. No question is generally off limits. It really comes down to interpersonal contact, human to human. That's the way that you break down barriers. That's the way you break down stereotypes. It's just talking to people and being open. I'm a mom. I like dancing. I like cooking. I like going to the library.
For full disclosure,
right?
You are the teacher.
Right.
You are the African dance teacher for our Rites of Passage program, and one of the best dance classes we've had throughout the 22 years we've been doing the program. You've always given us Kwame does an incredible job as well. We can't take that from them, but you just dance with them as well. So
in Saudi Arabia, you don't have to cover your hair, but you do have to wear an abaya, which is like a coat. But people think you only have to wear black. I have yellow, I have green, I have blue, I have pink abayas. It's just a matter of showing respect.
Fabulous pictures of you, sweetheart. As a matter of fact, I hope maybe we could get some to Tony so we can see some really beautiful pictures when you were in Saudi Arabia, and also when you were in Ghana too as well. Some incredibly beautiful pictures. I was like, I want that.
You're you wherever you go. Wherever I go, I'm still a black girl from America, so I got to represent for the people.
And you do well, and I truly appreciate you being here with us. Thank you so much. I want to bring you back, though, because I think that there's so much more we have not covered, and I think that it's important that we learn more about our sisters and brothers who are here, who are Muslim, because there's so many negative stereotypes that we have out there, and the only reason we have any kind of stereotype is ignorance. And so in order for you to dispel whatever ignorance you may have about any group of people, is to get to know them, just like our sister said. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and we see you again on our next episode of Focus.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of Focus. And if you'd like to contact us, if there's a topic you'd like to see us present or someone you'd like us to talk to, the information is right up on the screen. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. Same station, same time, when Focus continues.